Snow blanketed the city as a billionaire's headlights shone on a little girl lying beneath a frozen tree, clutching a photograph as if it were her heartbeat. The face in the picture choked him. It was his own face when he was young. That night, money meant nothing, and a promise would cost him everything. Snow fell in thick, deliberate silence, muting Chicago into a city that barely breathed. The park road curved through Lincoln Park like a pale ribbon, empty except for a black luxury sedan cutting through the white. Inside, Declan Royce, 38, loosened his tie and exhaled slowly. Another contract closed. Another victory stacked onto a life that looked perfect from the outside and felt hollow on the inside. His headlights swept across frozen grass, bare trees, and untouched snow until something broke the pattern. Declan frowned. A shape beneath an old oak tree. At first he thought it was a discarded coat. Then the shape moved, just barely. His foot slammed the brake. The car slid tires, whispering panic before stopping a few feet short. Declan's heart thudded hard as he opened the door. Cold air sliced into his lungs like a reprimand. He stepped out, shoes crunching against ice, eyes locked on the small figure ahead. It was a child. A little girl sat curled beneath the tree, knees pulled to her chest, snow collecting on her shoulders, like she had been there long enough for winter to claim her. She held something tight against her coat, as if letting go would erase it. Declan approached, slowly lowering himself into her line of sight. "Hey," he said gently, voice careful not to fracture the moment. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" She didn't answer. Her cheeks were red with cold. Her lashes glittered with frozen tears. Her eyes weren't scared, just fixed, stubbornly focused on whatever she was holding. Declan followed her gaze. A photograph. Something about the way she clutched it made his chest tighten. Not yet fear, not yet recognition, just the sense that this night was about to take something from him, or give him something he was never meant to find. Declan knelt fully in the snow, ignoring the cold seeping through his trousers. He was careful not to tower over her, careful not to become another adult who frightened instead of helped. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The girl hesitated, lips trembling. "Safi," she whispered. "Saffron." Her voice was thin but steady, like someone used to holding herself together. "That's a beautiful name," Declan said. "I'm Declan." She nodded once, but her eyes never left the photograph. "Can I ask what you're holding?" he said, keeping his tone neutral. Safi's fingers tightened around the edges. "It's my dad." Something in her certainty made Declan pause. "May I see it?" he asked gently. She studied his face, weighing him in a way that felt far too mature for 6 years old. Then slowly she extended the photo. Declan took it, and the world lurched. The man staring back at him was unmistakable. Him. Younger. Leaner. Clean-shaven. Wearing a black suit from a private shoot taken years before fame, before headlines, before he became untouchable. A photo he had never released. Never shared. His breath caught painfully in his throat. Snow blurred his vision, or maybe it was something else. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low despite himself. Safi flinched at the change in his tone. "Mom had it," she said quickly. "She said it was the only picture." Declan swallowed hard. "Your mom's name, Elena Hale." The name struck like ice to the spine. Declan's pulse roared in his ears. He looked back at Safi, really looked this time. The blue of her eyes, the shape of her smile, a dimple he had seen once long ago in a woman he loved and left behind. He forced himself to breathe. "Where's your mom now, Safi?" he asked carefully. Her gaze dropped. "She went to get medicine," she said. "She told me to wait here." The wind shifted colder now, pushing snow across the ground in quiet waves. Declan glanced around the empty park road. No cars, no footsteps, no searching voice calling a child's name. "How long have you been here?" he asked. Safi hugged herself tighter. since last night. The words landed heavy. Declan felt something crack open in his chest. We don't have a house anymore, she continued, speaking as if explaining the weather. We stayed at a shelter, but it closed. Mom said if she didn't come back, I should wait here, because she said this tree is easy to find. A child's logic, a mother's desperate plan. Declan stood and shrugged out of his overcoat, wrapping it around Safi's shoulders before she could protest. The fabric swallowed her small frame. She gasped softly at the warmth. You can't stay here, he said firmly, but not unkindly. It's too cold. Safi looked up, panic flickering in her eyes. Mom said not to go with strangers. She was right, Declan said immediately. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the photograph again, and held it between them. But I don't think I'm a stranger. Safi frowned, confused. Why? Declan lowered himself back into the snow so they were eye level. Because I think, he said slowly, choosing each word like it might shatter, that I might be your dad. Silence. Snow fell thicker, heavier, as if the sky itself was listening. Safi stared at him, searching his face for something she didn't yet have a name for. That doesn't make sense, she whispered. Declan nodded. I know. But right now, the only thing that matters is keeping you safe. He extended his hand, palm open. Let me help you, he said. After a long moment, Safi reached out and placed her freezing fingers into his. And in that instant, Declan Royce, billionaire builder of empires, felt the weight of a responsibility he could no longer outrun. Declan guided Safi toward the car, like he was walking a fragile secret through the snow. Her boots crunched softly, each step slow, cautious, like the ground might betray her if she moved too fast. She kept glancing back at the oak tree, as if leaving it meant breaking a rule her mother had stitched into her bones. Declan opened the back door and held it wide. Just for a minute, he said. To warm up. We're not leaving the area until we figure out what to do. Safi hesitated, then climbed in. The seat swallowed her small body. Declan turned the heater on full blast and watched the vents breathe warm air like the car itself was exhaling relief. Safi held her hands over the airflow, fingers shaking. Declan's coat was still around her shoulders, oversized and heavy like a shield she didn't know she deserved. He slid into the driver's seat and kept his voice low. I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay? You're not in trouble. Safi nodded without looking at him. What's your mom's phone number? Declan asked. She didn't have one, Safi whispered. She said it costs money. Declan's jaw tightened. He stared straight ahead at the empty road, at the snow thickening like a curtain between this moment and the rest of the world. Do you remember where the shelter was? He asked. Safi blinked, concentrating. A building with a blue door. It smells like soap. There's a picture of a lighthouse inside. Declan nodded slowly. Okay. That's good. That's really good. He checked his mirrors, not because he expected danger, but because he suddenly understood how exposed a child could be in a city full of warm homes and cold hearts. He pulled the car into motion, carefully, tires whispering over ice. The park drifted behind them, swallowed by white. Safi watched the city pass like it belonged to someone else. Dark storefronts, bus stops buried in snow, streetlights glowing weak and tired. Declan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her cheeks still red, her hair damp from melting snow, her eyes stubbornly holding back fear. You said your mom told you to wait? Declan said softly. Did she say anything else? Safi swallowed. She said, if she doesn't come back, I have to be brave. She said, the world is loud, but I should listen to my heart. Declan's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't deserve to be anyone's heart-listening lesson. Did she tell you your dad's name? He asked. Safi shook her head. She said he was kind and smart and rich. Her voice caught. She said he didn't know about me. Declan felt the words slice clean through him. He had built his life on certainty, but now certainty turned into something uglier: regret. At a stoplight, he turned slightly, meeting her gaze through the gap between seats. "Safi," he said gently, "I don't want you to be scared. I'm going to get you somewhere safe. Then we'll find your mom." Safi stared at him for a long, trembling moment, then whispered, "Promise." Declan nodded once. "Promise." And the city kept moving, unaware a man's entire life had just changed in the back seat of his car. Declan found the building by Safi's memory alone: blue door, cracked sign, a painted lighthouse fading under winter grime. Harbor Light Shelter sat hunched between two abandoned storefronts, as if the city had tried to forget it existed. He parked close, rushed around to the back seat, and lifted Safi gently, before she had to step into deeper snow. She stiffened at first, then relaxed, head resting against his shoulder, like her body knew what her mind still couldn't accept. Inside, the air was warm for 1 second, then the draft hit cold, sneaking through old window frames. A single lamp glowed on the front desk. Behind it, a young woman with tired eyes looked up, already shaking her head. "We're closed," she said, voice firm but not cruel. "Power issues since last night. We can't keep people overnight." Declan didn't flash money. He didn't throw his name like a hammer. He stepped forward and lowered his voice to something human. "There's a child," he said. "She was outside all night. I need a safe place for her to rest while I locate her mother." The volunteer's gaze snapped to Safi. The moment she saw the girl's red cheeks and trembling hands, her expression changed, protective, immediate. "What's your name, honey?" she asked softly. "Safi," the girl whispered, clutching the photograph against Declan's chest. "I'm Maris," the volunteer said. "Okay, come with me." Declan followed as Maris led them past folding chairs, donation bins, and a bulletin board covered in handwritten pleas and faded hope. In the back, a small room held a cot and a blanket, thin but clean. Maris pulled the blanket down and fluffed the pillow, as if she could soften the world through simple motions. Safi climbed onto the cot, still wrapped in Declan's coat. Her eyelids drooped, exhaustion finally winning. Declan crouched beside her. "You did really good," he murmured. Safi's voice was tiny. "Do you think Mom's okay?" Declan's throat tightened. He glanced away, forcing control over his expression. Truth was a blade. She didn't need it swung at her while she was still shaking. "I'm going to make sure she's okay," he said carefully. "You rest." Safi clutched the photo harder. "Don't leave." Declan paused, then sat in the chair beside the cot. "I'm right here." Maris returned with a cup of warm cocoa and a granola bar. Safi's fingers wrapped around the cup like it was sunlight. She took a sip, then another, the warmth spreading slowly across her face. Within minutes, her breathing softened. She fell asleep, still holding the photograph. Declan stared at the wall, listening to the wind outside, and realized something terrifying. He had spent his life building walls to keep pain out, but tonight pain had walked in anyway, carrying a little girl and an impossible photo. Declan stepped into the shelter hallway and closed the door quietly behind him. The silence there felt heavier, like the building itself was holding its breath. He pulled out his phone and scrolled until he found the name he hadn't touched in years. Jules Mercer, a detective, an old friend. One of the few people who had known Declan before the empire hardened around him. He pressed call. It rang twice. Then a calm, tired voice answered. "Mercer," Jules Declan said. His voice came out lower than intended, rough around the edges. "It's Declan Royce." A pause. A long one. "You don't call unless something's burning," Jules said. Declan leaned against the wall, eyes on the floor. "Something is," he replied. "Her name is Elena Hale." The air changed on the other end. Jules exhaled slowly. "Elena," he said, softer now. "Yeah, I remember her. She's missing," Declan said. "And there's a child, 6 years old. She was alone in the snow." The girl says Elena went to get medicine and told her to wait in the park. Another pause, shorter, sharper. Professional mode sliding into place. Where are you, Jules asked. Harbor Light Shelter. Blue door, lighthouse mural. Okay, Jules said. Stay put. I'm going to start checking hospital shelters' intake logs. I'll pull traffic cams near the park and the routes to pharmacies. Any address history? Declan swallowed. She used to live near Brookside Apartments, he said. The words tasted like an old wound reopening. I haven't seen her in almost 7 years. Jules didn't judge. He didn't ask why. What's the child's name? Saffron Hale. They call her Safi. A beat. You believe she's yours, Jules said, not as a question. Declan stared at the photograph in his mind, his own face younger, staring back like a ghost. Yes. Jules's voice softened again, human inside the badge. All right. We'll do this carefully. That child's safety comes first. Declan's chest tightened, relief and fear colliding. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Jules said. Tell me everything you know. Declan gave details, park location, timeline, Safi's account of the photograph. He didn't mention money. He mentioned warmth. He mentioned the way a 6-year-old's fingers felt like ice when she trusted him anyway. When he finally ended the call, Declan stood still, staring at the shelter's peeling paint and old posters. He didn't feel powerful. He felt exposed. He went back into the room quietly. Safi was asleep, lashes resting on her cheeks, photo still pinned to her chest. Declan sat beside her again, closer now, like proximity could become protection. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, a billionaire held his breath because somewhere in this city, the woman he once loved was missing, and a little girl was trusting him like he was the answer. And Declan Royce wasn't sure he deserved that kind of faith. Time moved strangely inside Harbor Light Shelter. Minutes stretched. The heater hummed, then fell silent again. Outside, the wind pressed against the building like it wanted answers too. Declan sat beside Safi's cot, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't touch her. He didn't move. He simply stayed, afraid that even breathing too loudly might take something away from her. His phone vibrated. Declan froze. He stood slowly and stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him with care. He answered before the second ring finished. Jules. The detective didn't waste time. Declan. I found Elena. Declan's heart leapt. Where is she? Silence just long enough to warn him. There was a car accident last night, Jules said carefully. East Bridge, around 11:30. Declan gripped the phone harder. Is she? I'm sorry, Jules said. She didn't survive. The world narrowed to a dull ringing. Declan leaned his shoulder against the wall as if gravity had suddenly doubled. No, he whispered. That can't be right. The ID is confirmed, Jules continued gently. Hospital intake. Coroner. It's her. Declan closed his eyes. Elena's laugh flashed through his mind, the way she used to tilt her head when she listened. The last argument, the last door he closed. What about the child? Jules asked quietly. She's asleep, Declan said, voice breaking despite his effort. She thinks her mom is coming back. Jules exhaled slowly. Then listen to me. You do not tell her tonight. Not here, not like this. She needs warmth, food, stability. The truth can wait until she's safe. Declan nodded, even though Jules couldn't see him. I know. I'll handle the official side, Jules said. And Declan, I'm sorry. The call ended. Declan stood there for a long moment, phone pressed to his ear long after it went silent. The shelter lights buzzed faintly overhead. Somewhere inside the building, a child breathed softly, unaware that her world had just broken in half. Declan wiped his face with the heel of his hand and forced himself to straighten. He had made mistakes. He had left. He had chosen ambition over love. But right now, one thing mattered more than guilt. Safi needed him to be steady. He opened the door and stepped back into the room, carrying a truth so heavy it felt like it might pull him under. Safi woke just after dawn. Her eyes fluttered open, searching the room before settling on Declan. Relief softened her face. "You're still here," she murmured. Declan nodded. "I told you I would be." She sat up slowly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "Did you find Mom?" The question landed like a blade. Declan knelt in front of her, making sure his face was calm, his voice steady. He chose each word with surgical care. "Not yet," he said. "But people are helping me look." Safi nodded, accepting the answer too easily, like a child who wanted to believe more than she wanted to know. Maris returned with toast and a small carton of milk. Safi ate quietly, eyes drifting to the door every few seconds, listening for footsteps that would never come. Declan watched her chest tight. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, but this required a different kind of courage. "Can I ask you something?" Safi said suddenly. "Anything." "If you're really my dad," she said, hesitant, "why didn't you come before?" The question was small. The answer was not. Declan swallowed. "Because I didn't know," he said, "and because I made choices I thought were important, but weren't." Safi studied his face like she was memorizing it. "Mom said grown-ups make mistakes too." Declan almost smiled. Almost. "She was right," he said quietly. Later that morning, Declan arranged a medical check, nothing invasive, nothing frightening, just warmth, reassurance, and confirmation that Safi hadn't suffered harm beyond cold and exhaustion. The doctor spoke kindly, praised her bravery, gave her a sticker shaped like a star. Safi clutched it proudly. "Mom likes stars," she said. Declan's heart ached, but he nodded. "She has good taste." When they returned to the shelter room, Maris pulled Declan aside. "We can't keep her another night," she said apologetically. "Power's unstable, it's not safe." Declan already knew the answer forming in his chest. He looked at Safi, small, quiet drawing on scrap paper with a dull pencil. He had a house, heat, security, space. And for the first time in his life, all of it finally meant something. "Safi," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "How would you feel about staying with me for a little while?" She looked up, uncertain. "Until Mom comes back," Declan nodded, throat tight. "Until then." She hesitated, then whispered, "Okay." And the lie, gentle, temporary, protective, settled between them like a fragile bridge. They left Harbor Light just before noon. Declan signed forms, exchanged quiet words with Maris, promised updates, promised care, promised he would not disappear. Outside, the snow had softened, falling slower now, like the storm itself was growing tired. Safi climbed into the back seat, wearing borrowed gloves and a knit hat pulled low over her ears. She pressed her forehead to the window, watching the shelter shrink behind them. "Will Mom know where I am?" she asked. Declan kept his eyes on the road. "Yes," he said carefully. "She'll know you're safe." The city rolled past gray buildings, giving way to quieter streets, then long stretches of white trees. Safi traced shapes in the fogged glass with her finger. "My mom used to sing in the car," she said suddenly. "When we were scared." Declan's voice was soft. "What did she sing?" Safi hummed, barely audible. The tune was simple, broken, beautiful. Declan listened, heart aching. He didn't interrupt. He didn't fill the silence. When the iron gates of his estate appeared ahead, Safi sat up straighter. "Is this where you live?" "Yes," Declan said. The gates opened slowly. The mansion rose from the snow, large, quiet, intimidating. Safi stared. "It's big." Declan smiled faintly. It didn't used to feel that way. Inside, warmth wrapped around them. Light reflected off polished floors. Everything was still untouched, like the house had been waiting for a sound it didn't know how to make. Safi took a careful step forward. Do you live here alone? Yes? She thought for a moment. That sounds lonely. Declan didn't argue. He led her to a guest room near his own. Soft lighting, neutral colors, a bed far too big for one small girl. He found an old quilt his mother's and tucked it around her shoulders. Safi yawned, exhaustion finally catching up. Do you think Mom will come soon? Declan froze for half a second, then forced a gentle smile. Not tonight, he said. But she'd want you to rest. Safi nodded and curled onto her side, clutching the photograph to her chest. Declan stood in the doorway long after her breathing slowed. Behind him, the mansion was still silent. But for the first time, it didn't feel empty. Morning light filtered through tall windows, pale and hesitant, as if unsure it was welcome here. Declan had been awake for hours, sitting at the kitchen island, with a cup of coffee gone cold. He listened, really listened to the house. It made no sound, no footsteps, no laughter, no small voice asking questions. Until now. Soft shuffling echoed in the hallway. Declan looked up just as Safi appeared in the doorway, wrapped in the oversized quilt hair sticking up in quiet rebellion. Good morning, he said gently. She nodded. It smells like breakfast. Declan almost smiled. Almost. I tried pancakes. Tried, she asked. He shrugged. No promises. She climbed onto a stool, watching him with serious attention as he poured batter onto the pan. The first pancake came out uneven and too dark. Safi giggled. A small sound, but it filled the room like warmth. My mom burned them too, she said. Declan flipped another slower this time. Then I'm in good company. They ate together at the long table, meant for 12 but holding only 2. Safi poured too much syrup, sticky and sweet, and Declan pretended not to notice. After breakfast, Safi wandered the house. She touched piano keys softly. She stared at framed awards. She counted the steps of the staircase. Do you work a lot? She asked. Yes, Declan admitted. She nodded, thoughtful. Mom said work makes people tired in their hearts if they forget why they do it. Declan felt the words settle deep. She was wise. Safi stopped in front of a photo wall, corporate events, smiling strangers, empty victories. She frowned. Where are your family pictures? Declan hesitated. I don't have many. Safi looked at him, then at the blank space on the wall. We could make some. The idea hit him harder than any loss. Later, he arranged a gentle check-in with a child counselor. Nothing formal, nothing forced. Just someone kind introduced as a helper. Safi was shy but curious, holding her star sticker like armor. As the day faded, Safi grew quiet again. Grief moved in waves, unpredictable. That night, as Declan tucked her in, she whispered, If Mom comes while I'm sleeping, will you wake me? Declan swallowed. Yes, he said, I promise. The lie pressed heavier now, because lies like houses eventually learn the names of the people living inside them. Safi started school 3 days later. A small private place near the lake. Quiet, careful. Declan stood back while staff explained things gently, making sure no one asked too much too fast. Safi held his hand tighter than she had the first night. It's just for today, Declan said. I'll be right here after. She nodded, brave and trembling all at once. That afternoon, she ran to him holding a piece of paper. I made this. It was a drawing, 3 figures in crayon. One small, one tall, one faint and floating above them. That's Mom, Safi said softly, pointing to the one in the sky. Declan knelt. It's beautiful. That evening after dinner, Safi sat beside him on the couch, knees tucked in. Can I ask something? She said. Anything. She picked at a loose thread on the cushion. If you're really my dad, why didn't Mom tell me your name? Declan closed his eyes for a brief second. Because it hurt, he said honestly, and she didn't want that hurt to reach you. Safi nodded slowly. Did you hurt her? The question was gentle. The answer was not. Yes, Declan said. I did. Safi didn't accuse. She didn't cry. She simply leaned against him quiet. I think she forgave you, she whispered. She never said bad things. Declan's chest tightened. She was better than me. That night, Safi had a nightmare. Declan heard her before she reached his door. He opened it immediately, kneeling as she stumbled into his arms. I couldn't find her. She sobbed. Everyone was gone. Declan held her steady until her shaking slowed. I'm here, he said. You're not alone. She looked up, eyes red. Promise you won't disappear. Declan didn't hesitate. I won't. But even as he said it, he knew the truth was pressing closer. And soon staying meant telling her something that would break her heart all over again. A week passed. Snow melted slowly into slush. The city moved on. But inside the house, time felt suspended, balanced on a truth Declan could no longer outrun. Jules called one evening. Declan, he said quietly. We need to talk. Declan stepped onto the balcony, cold air biting his face. I know. The paperwork is finalized, Jules continued. There's no uncertainty anymore. Declan closed his eyes. She's asking questions. Of course she is, Jules said. She's smart, and kids feel the truth even when they don't know it. Declan stared out at the frozen lake. How do I tell her you don't do it alone, Jules replied. You do it gently. You do it honestly. And you do it when she knows she's safe. That night, Safi brought Declan a new drawing. 3 figures again, but this time the one in the sky was fading. I don't remember her voice very well, Safi said, frightened. Does that mean I'm losing her? Declan knelt in front of her. No, he said firmly. It means you're growing. Love doesn't disappear just because memories change. She searched his face. You're not telling me something. The moment had arrived. Declan's heart pounded. He opened his mouth, then stopped. Not yet. Not tonight. Tomorrow, he said softly. We'll talk tomorrow. Safi nodded, trusting him the way children trust the ground beneath their feet. That night, Declan didn't sleep. He sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames, rehearsing words that felt too small for the truth they had to carry. Upstairs, Safi slept curled around the quilt, whispering her mother's name into the dark. And Declan knew tomorrow the lie would end, and love would have to be strong enough to survive what came next. Morning arrived without ceremony. The sky was pale. The snow outside had thinned into quiet patches of white. Declan stood in the kitchen holding a mug he hadn't touched, watching Safi sit at the table drawing circles that never closed. She glanced up. You said we'd talk today? Declan nodded. His chest felt too tight for words. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down slowly, making sure his eyes were level with hers. Yes, he said. We will. Safi tilted her head. Is it about Mom? The word landed softly and shattered everything. Declan inhaled, then exhaled. He didn't rush. He didn't soften the truth into something false. He shaped it into something a child could hold without cutting herself. Safi, he began, voice steady but low. Your mom loved you more than anything. Everything she did was to keep you safe. Safi's fingers tightened around the crayon. I know. There was an accident the night she went to get medicine, Declan continued. A car accident. Safi frowned, confused. But accidents don't mean people disappear. Declan felt his throat close. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the table so she could see they were shaking. She didn't make it, he said quietly. Silence. The crayon slipped from Safi's fingers and rolled across the table, clacking softly against the wood. No, she whispered. You said she was coming back. Declan's eyes burned. I said that because I didn't want you to be alone with the truth while you were cold and scared. Safi pushed back from the table, breath quickening. You lied. Yes, Declan said. I did. Her face crumpled, not loudly, not dramatically, just inward. Tears spilled slow and relentless. She promised. Safi sobbed. She said she'd come back. Declan stood and knelt beside her chair, careful not to grab, not to force comfort. "I know," he whispered, "and she didn't break that promise on purpose." Safi slid off the chair and sank to the floor, curling into herself. Declan sat beside her, back against the cabinet, close enough to be there without trapping her. For a long time she cried, and Declan learned there were no words powerful enough to stop grief, only love patient enough to stay. They went to the cemetery the next morning. The snow there was untouched, smooth like a held breath. A simple headstone marked, "Elena Hale." No flowers yet, just quiet. Safi stood still, clutching a folded drawing against her coat. Declan didn't rush her. After a moment, she stepped forward and knelt, placing the drawing carefully at the base of the stone. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "I found Dad." Declan's chest tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. Safi touched the cold stone with 2 fingers. "I didn't forget you," she said. "I just didn't know how to say goodbye." The wind stirred softly, moving snow across the ground like a hush. "Do you think she's mad?" Safi asked without looking back. Declan shook his head. "No," he said. "I think she'd be proud of you." "And of you?" Safi asked. Declan swallowed. "I hope so." They stood there together, small figures against a wide, white world. Declan placed a gentle hand on Safi's shoulder. This time she didn't pull away. On the drive home, Safi was quiet. At a stoplight, she asked if Mom hadn't died. "Would you have stayed away?" Declan didn't dodge it. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know this now that I've found you, I'm not leaving." Safi nodded slowly, absorbing the words. That night, she didn't cry. She asked Declan to sit on the edge of her bed while she fell asleep. He did. She held onto his sleeve like an anchor. "Dad?" she murmured. "Yes, if you ever forget her," she said sleepily. "I'll remind you." Declan smiled through tears. "I'd like that." She drifted off. Declan stayed long after listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of a promise settle into his bones. Grief didn't disappear. It changed shape. Safi stopped waiting for the door to open, but she still talked to her mom. She drew pictures and placed them in a small corner Declan set up with Elena's photo and a notebook just for messages. Some days were easy. Some weren't. Declan learned which days needed pancakes and which needed silence. One evening, Safi brought him a drawing, 2 figures, holding hands, a faint sun above them. "That's Mom," she said. "She's not gone. She's just up there." Declan nodded. "I think you're right." Later, while brushing her teeth, Safi asked, "Do you think I can still be happy?" Declan knelt beside her. "Yes," he said, without hesitation. "And it doesn't mean you loved her less." She considered that, then smiled faintly. That night, they built a small snowman in the garden. Safi wrapped Declan's scarf around it and laughed when it slid crooked. "It looks like you," she said. Declan laughed, too soft, real unguarded. When they went inside, Safi curled up on the couch beside him. "Dad," she whispered, already half asleep. "Yes, I'm glad you found me." Declan closed his eyes, emotion finally breaking free. "I'm the lucky one." Outside, snow fell gently again. Inside a house that once echoed with silence now held something stronger than loss. It held a promise. The world didn't wait long to notice. A black sedan seen outside a shelter. A child walking into a private school with Declan Royce. Whispers slid through the city like melting snow, quiet, curious, careless. Declan shut them out. He canceled meetings, redirected calls, gave his assistant one instruction only: nothing about the child leaves this house. Safi felt the shift anyway. One afternoon after school, she climbed into the back seat slower than usual. People were staring, she said, staring at her hands. Declan glanced at her in the mirror. "Did anyone say anything to you?" She shook her head. Just looking. Declan nodded once. You didn't do anything wrong. At home he showed her the study once, off limits, now just another room. This is where I work, he said. But if you ever feel uncomfortable anywhere, you tell me. Safi considered that. Even if it's your office, especially then, he said. That night, Safi asked to help cook dinner. She stood on a stool carefully stirring soup tongue, peeking out in concentration. Mom used to let me stir, she said. Declan watched steam rise. Then you're the expert. After dinner, Safi brought him a note from school, a permission slip for a class trip. The line for parent/guardian signature sat empty. She tapped it with her finger. Is that you? Declan didn't rush the answer. He took the pen, signed his name clearly, and slid it back. Yes, he said. That's me. Safi stared at the paper, then smiled, small but real. Later, when the house quieted, Declan stepped onto the balcony and called Jules. She's settling, Declan said. But the world's circling. I'll keep them back, Jules replied. Legally and otherwise? Declan exhaled. I'm not worried about me, I know, Jules said. You're worried about her. Inside, Safi taped a new drawing to the wall, her first family picture in the house. The home didn't protest. It adjusted. Grief arrived in quiet ways. Sometimes Safi woke smiling. Sometimes she woke already tired. Declan learned not to fix, only to notice. One morning she refused breakfast. I'm not hungry, she said, pushing the plate away. Declan didn't argue. He slid the plate closer. It'll be here if you change your mind. She did 20 minutes later. After school, they started a routine. Homework at the table, drawing after. Piano music sometimes played, sometimes just listened to. Safi liked the sad songs best. They feel honest, she said. One evening a storm rolled in. Thunder rattled the windows. Safi froze, mid-step, eyes wide. Declan was beside her instantly. You're okay, he said, steady. She nodded but didn't move. Declan sat on the floor with her until the thunder passed, saying nothing. Silence was the lesson. That night she knocked on his door blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. Can I sleep here? She asked, embarrassed. Declan pulled a chair beside his bed and laid the blanket over it. You can stay, he said, as long as you need. She curled into the chair and slept within minutes. In the morning, she smiled shyly. I didn't have a bad dream. Declan nodded. Good. At school, Safi began talking more, making one friend, laughing at recess. Her teacher sent a note. She's very kind. She helps other kids when they're sad. Declan held the note for a long time. One afternoon, Safi asked, Do you think Mom would like it here? Declan thought of Elena, her stubborn warmth, her quiet courage. Yes, he said. I think she'd be relieved. Safi leaned against him. Me too. That night, Declan realized something subtle and terrifying. He wasn't just protecting a child anymore. He was being changed by her. Winter loosened its grip slowly. Snow retreated from sidewalks. Trees showed hints of green. The world, indifferent and relentless, moved forward. So did they. Declan took Safi to the park, daytime now safe and bright. They walked past the oak tree where he'd found her. Safi stopped. That's it, she said. Declan waited. She touched the bark lightly. I was really cold, she said, but I wasn't scared. Declan's chest tightened. You were brave. She nodded. But I don't want to be that brave again. You won't have to be, he said immediately. They sat on a nearby bench. Safi swung her legs. Dad, yes. If you hadn't stopped. What would have happened? Declan didn't lie. I don't know, he said, but I'm glad I did. She leaned her head on his arm. Me too. That evening they built a small memory box. Photos, drawings, notes, a copy of the lighthouse picture from the shelter wall. This is for Mom, Safi said. So we don't forget. Declan placed the photo inside carefully. We won't. Before bed, Safi handed him a folded card. Inside, uneven letters read, "I feel safe now." Declan closed his eyes, emotion finally cresting, not sharp, not breaking. "Solid. I'll protect you," he said quietly. "Always." Safi smiled, already drifting towards sleep. "I know." Outside, the night was calm. Inside, a promise settled, not dramatic, not loud, permanent. Spring arrived quietly without asking permission. The lake thawed, snow retreated into memory. Sunlight lingered longer in the afternoons, spilling through the tall windows of the house, like it had finally been invited inside. Safi came home from school one Friday holding a folded piece of paper pressed to her chest. "Can I show you something?" she asked, hesitant in a way that felt important. Declan set his phone aside immediately. "Of course." She unfolded the paper on the table. It was a school assignment, My Family. Crayon figures filled the page. A small girl, a tall man, and above them, faint but present, a soft yellow circle in the sky. "That's Mom," Safi said, pointing upward. "She's still part of it." Declan nodded. "She always will be." Safi traced the taller figure. "And that's you." Declan's breath caught. "I like your drawing." She smiled, then grew serious. "My teacher asked who you were." Declan waited. "I said, 'You're my dad.'" The word landed gently and changed everything. Declan didn't speak at first. He didn't want to rush the moment, didn't want to turn it into something loud or performative. "How did that feel?" he asked carefully. Safi shrugged. "Right," she said simply. "Is that okay?" Declan swallowed hard. "It's more than okay." That night they cooked dinner together. Safi insisted on helping set the table, aligning the plates just so. Music played softly in the background. Nothing sad this time, something warm. While washing dishes, Safi asked, "Do you think Mom knows I called you that?" Declan dried his hands slowly. "I think she knows you're safe," he said, "and I think that's what she wanted most." Later, as Declan tucked her in, Safi hesitated. "Dad," she said, testing the word again. "Yes, if I say it out loud. Will you still be here in the morning?" Declan sat on the edge of the bed, steady and sure. "Every morning," he said. "Every night." She nodded, satisfied, and turned onto her side. As Declan closed the door, he leaned his forehead against it for a brief moment, overwhelmed not by loss, but by arrival. For the first time, he wasn't filling an empty space. He was answering a call he should have answered years ago. The ceremony was small. No cameras, no press, no announcements. Just a quiet courtroom and a judge who spoke kindly and without spectacle. Declan held Safi's hand the entire time. When the papers were signed, the judge smiled. "You're officially a family," she said. Safi squeezed Declan's fingers. "We already were," she whispered. Outside, sunlight warmed the steps. Declan crouched in front of her. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked gently. She nodded. "It means you're not leaving." "That's right," he said. "Ever." They celebrated not with anything grand, but with ice cream at a small shop near the lake. Safi got chocolate on her nose and laughed when Declan pointed it out. "This is better than cake," she declared. That evening, they visited the cemetery together. Safi placed a small bouquet of wildflowers by the headstone. "Hi, Mom," she said. "I'm okay, I promise." Declan stood beside her, silent, grateful. Back home, as night settled, Safi curled up on the couch with a book. Declan read aloud, voice steady, unhurried. Halfway through the story, she fell asleep, head resting against his side. Declan looked down at her, peaceful, safe, alive, and felt the full weight of the promise he'd made. Not dramatic, not heroic. Daily. He carried her to bed carefully, as if the moment might break if he moved too fast. Before turning off the light, Safi stirred. "Dad," she murmured. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm not cold anymore." Declan smiled, eyes burning. "I know," He turned off the light and stepped into the hallway. The house stood quiet behind him, but not empty. It held laughter now. Footsteps, drawings on the walls. It held a future. Years later, winter returned, soft this time, almost polite. Snow dusted the garden instead of burying it. The lake froze slowly without anger. Inside the house, warmth lived permanently, now stitched into the walls by routine and laughter. Safi sat at the dining table doing homework, her hair longer, her handwriting surer. She paused, chewing the end of her pencil. "Dad," she called. Declan looked up from the stove. "Yeah, do you remember the tree?" He didn't need to ask which one. "I do." She nodded thoughtfully. "I don't dream about it anymore." Declan turned off the burner and sat across from her. "That's okay," he said. "It doesn't mean it didn't matter." Safi smiled faintly. "I know. It just means I'm not there anymore." That night they walked outside together. Snowflakes fell lazily, catching in Safi's hair. The garden lights glowed soft and gold. Near the back fence stood a small oak sapling, new young, planted the year before. "This one's ours," Safi said, touching its thin trunk. "Not the scary one." Declan nodded. "This one grows here." They stood quietly, breath fogging the air. Somewhere inside the piano hummed from a forgotten note still vibrating. "Dad," Safi said after a moment, "if Mom could see us, what do you think she'd say?" Declan looked at the snow at the house behind them, at the girl beside him who had taught him how to stay. "I think she'd say thank you," he said, "for choosing each other." Safi slipped her hand into his. "I think she'd say, don't be late anymore." Declan smiled, eyes burning. "I won't." Later, as Safi slept, Declan walked through the house, past drawings framed on walls, past photos that had replaced awards, past rooms that finally felt used for living. He stopped at the front window. Snow continued to fall. Quiet. Gentle. Declan thought about the man he used to be, the one who drove through the night without seeing what mattered. He thought about the child under the tree clutching a photo like a lifeline. He thought about how close he'd come to never stopping. From upstairs, Safi stirred and murmured softly in her sleep, "Dad." Declan closed his eyes. "I'm here," he whispered, not just to her, but to the life he had finally stepped into. Outside, winter moved on. Inside, a promise held. And the house, once cold, once silent, stood full and breathing, no longer defined by what had been lost, but by what had been found. Home. Did this story move you? Share your thoughts in the comments and rate this story from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Click on the last screen to see the next emotional chapter waiting for you. See you in the next story.